All right, welcome to the Penn State Berks LionSide Chat. Come on in and welcome to our campus. We are so glad that you could join us today. My name is Ryan Hassler, and I'm one of three LionSide Chat moderators working alongside Pfeifer, Reitz, and Sonia Delaquito. Before we get started, we wanted to share with you that you should please feel free to submit questions throughout the program via the Q&A feature. We won't be using the chat feature or the raise your hand in this session. Today's chat is part 5 of a 6-part summer series on the Penn State values. And so today's value is talking about excellence. Once our presentation concludes, we will facilitate a discussion with our panelists. We'll also be recording today's session so you can revisit the topic or even share the experience with friends and family. I'm now honored to introduce 3 distinguished honorees of Excellence Awards in 2021 from Penn State University. So with us, joining us today is Professor Don Pfeifer Reitz, who's Assistant Teaching Professor in Communication Arts and Sciences and the CAS 100 Coordinator, who was awarded the 2021 Penn State Berks Teaching Award. Miss Sonia Delaquito is the Learning Center Coordinator. She was awarded the 2021 Penn State Staff Advisory Council Excellence Award. And we're also joined by Dr. Marietta Scanlon, Associate Teaching Professor of Engineering, who is the 2021 Atherton Award for Excellence in Teaching for Penn State University. So welcome to these 3 wonderful ladies for joining us today and to share with us some of their views on excellence. So I believe I'm turning it over to Sonia and we'll get started.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you and provide some visual aids for our presentation here. So like Ryan said, today we're going to talk about the Penn State value of excellence. And I just want to thank you, Ryan, for inviting me and us and for everybody in the audience joining us for this exploration on the value. So in preparing for today's session, I learned that the values here at Penn State were developed over a 4-year period that included a survey, different town hall meetings, and ongoing feedback from across the community. And I think that's pretty amazing that they engaged everybody at the university in this process who was here at that time. So that being said, this is the definition of excellence that Penn State follows. We strive for excellence in our endeavors as individuals, an institution, and a leader in higher education. So as Ryan had mentioned earlier, the reason why I was invited today is because I was a recipient of this year's University Staff Advisory Council Staff Excellence Award, which was amazing and I didn't know much about. So once I got the notification, I researched a little bit more about it because I'm like, oh, I was like, how does this even happen? But one of the things that was really interesting was that it mentioned all of the different values from Penn State. But I know that there were some people out there who had to write some excellent letters of recommendation for me to receive this award. But I thought it was really interesting because I understand that the values here really need and should drive all of the work that we do here at the campus. And I actually have a list. I even have it here at home. My little values, it's backwards right now, but my little values card that I keep by my computer, and I will occasionally glance at it throughout the day, like honestly, to ensure that my thoughts, feelings, actions, and communications, behaviors are all in alignment with like the values of that institution. So I might draft that email, but I may not send it based off of, making sure that I'm following what our values are. And I also want to make sure that they're in alignment with my personal values. So I think synchronizing your own values with the values of your employer, or better yet, finding a match prior to employment would be a solid start. And this is more specifically geared towards our incoming freshmen or our underclassmen. I can distinctly remember even like dropping the Penn State values, which were different at the time, but kind of similar, in my cover letter when I first applied for the position that I now hold with the university. So again, for our freshmen, entering freshmen or currently enrolled students, remember that eventually the workplace that you select upon graduation will be a key component to your happiness and satisfaction. And I ultimately believe it can influence your success in your different work roles and even in your life. So to prepare for today's session, since I in no way consider myself to be an expert on excellence, I went looking for the wisdom of others who have shared their thoughts on the values of excellence. And some of my favorite words happen to emerge in these three quotes, and that's attitude, habit, and choice. So one of the quotes was from Ralph Marston, who said, "Excellence is not a skill, it is an attitude." I like that. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit, by Will Durant. And then Aristotle, I was like, oh, philosophy coming in, so this is also really important. Excellence is never an accident. It is always a result of high intention, sincere effort, and intelligent execution. It represents the wise choice of many alternatives. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. And I was like, oh, this is so good. And then I was doing some more self-reflection, which I do a lot of, apparently. And I thought, man, I thought it would be awesome to pay it forward to anybody who's in our audience, students and just members of our community. I think it took me a long time to realize the beauty and the simplicity. And it's not really something that I understood until a few years ago after I had my kids and I made some serious lifestyle changes. But how you spend your time is a reflection on what you value. So let's just sit with that deep thoughts with Sonia for a minute. So if you want to identify what your values are, you want to do a reflection like how you spent your morning. What did you do this morning? What did you do last night? What have you been doing over the past week? Because I think if you're passionate about a cause or something, you're going to spend your time dedicated to helping to advance that cause. So what's your cause? Okay. Is it video games? Is it watching TikTok? Is it gardening? Is it drinking? Is it traveling, reading, sleeping? So for example, for myself, for today's purposes, I'm passionate about education, right? I want to make sure that people have access to education and that students have access to success and meeting every student kind of where they're at and empowering them with the tools to do the best that they possibly can. Okay. So my time and my energy is spent on work related to these efforts, and they're things that I'm passionate about. So when you find what your passion is, it's easy, effortless, and so much fun to invest your time wisely. So while I'm far from an expert on excellence per se, like something I can share as far as guidance or inspiration is for you to truly follow this phrase. Wait for it. Here it comes. Do what you love and love what you do. Okay. And everything else will follow. It'll just fall in place. So if you could examine your own values closely, what they are now, and they're going to change, with these different stages of your life, even in startling and traumatic events, say for instance, a pandemic, right? That could cause a shift in those core values that you have. So stay true to your passions, and the excellence will follow through your attitudes, choices, and behaviors. And even though you may not consider the work that you perform to be exceptional, that it's just what you love doing and it's the right thing to be doing. If you're lucky enough to find an organization whose values mirror your own, you're going to find that your colleagues, your superiors, the administrators at your institution are cognizant and appreciative of what you do. And when you feel confident in your contributions and good about what you do, that's the reward in and of itself, right? So in summary, I feel like I would be remiss without acknowledging the Berks campus, my supervisor, my staff, and my colleagues, without whose unwavering, seriously, I work with some really amazing people, unwavering support and assistance would have made my nomination of the Staff Excellence Award impossible. So gratitude is super important as well. So that's the end of my portion of the presentation, and I'm going to hand it over to Dawn.
Sonia, I'm going to ask that you continue to advance the slides when I say it. That's all right. Thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you, Sonia and Ryan, for having me, and Sonia for your awesome comments. And I love hearing a little bit about everybody's different perspectives about what they believe to be guiding principles for their work at Penn State Berks. And I actually have my little values card like right over my computer too. I may not be as purposeful as Sonia is with looking at that every day, but I know it's there. And actually Sonia was the one that gave it to me. So I appreciate that. I am here today representing the winner, I guess, of the Outstanding Teaching Award for Full-Time Faculty at Penn State Berks. This is an award that comes, if I understand it correctly, the division heads every year will nominate someone from the division. So there are 3 contenders for the award. And then there is a committee of past award winners that takes a look at a portfolio that each nominee has submitted and then makes the decision about who is the award winner for that past year. So this was an honor for me to receive. Teaching is something that I am super passionate about, and the word passion will come up again in my comments today. And it's something that I just put a lot of value in, and something I take very, very, very seriously in terms of how I run a classroom. So being recognized for that on this campus is something that I really appreciate. Next slide, please, Sonia. So I wanted to give a little bit of my story to be trendy here. I'm going to give you a how it started, how it's going. I'm not going to do any pictures with that because that would be weird. But so I want to just give a little bit of a nutshell of my my history in higher education. When I started college, I wanted to be a broadcast journalist. And clearly I am not doing that right now. And I had a long history of wanting to be a broadcast journalist and then being bitten by a legal bug and wanting to be an attorney as an undergraduate, and then not getting accepted into law school and needing to find a plan B. And that plan B wound up having a direct impact on my life. My plan B was actually to go to graduate school and earn a master's in higher education counseling, which opened up a whole new set of experience for me in terms of my story. I never knew that there were jobs in higher education and student affairs and residence life. And those are some of the places that I spent the early part of my years learning a little bit about how to be passionate about what I did. And what is really important is, even though I was not teaching at the time, I was working with students, undergraduate students, and some graduate students, and I was supervising them, mentoring them. But really what I was doing was I was developing myself as a teacher. Even though I was not standing up in front of a classroom, it was something that I was really starting to put together a number of my skills. So as time went on, I morphed into, for many reasons, into this role as a faculty member at a couple of institutions. And actually, I'm going to put in the chat a former LionSide chat that we have done. Oh, I don't think I did that correctly. A LionSide chat that we have done, there we are, that is from Convocation last year when I was honored to serve as the Convocation speaker. And that is a more robust explanation of what my story is. If you are interested in following up, you can go ahead and watch that chat. But the reason why I tell this story and how I really didn't intend to start off to be a teacher and be an instructor or professor here at a university level is because of my passion for things and my commitment to things. So Sonia, if you would go to the next slide, please. Excuse me. Or not. So it's all good. So I like to talk about the concept of excellence in terms of a commitment to something that you are passionate about. And for me, that is teaching students. From the time that I was supervising undergraduate students in my role as a residence coordinator, to all of my different roles in student affairs, and to my early time in the classroom, I have become passionate about teaching and about providing the best opportunity for the students that come into my classroom to have a growth experience. And for me, it's not necessarily about the X's and O's, about my content, although as a public speaking professor, what I teach is applicable to everyone, whether your major is a STEM field, and engineering, humanities, anything, medicine, anything that you're interested in, even turf management. We have that as a major here at Penn State. And I have a student that is in graduate school in turf management somewhere in the world. He just sent me a note talking about all of the values that he learned in my class was applicable to him recently, giving a major presentation on grass. So this was serious, right? So the stuff that I learn I learn about and then I teach to my students are so valuable. And what I do is I work to make a commitment to the students that come into my classroom every single semester and provide them a sense of passion. And I give them that passion. That's something that I value myself. So how passion and commitment reflect on excellence, I just want to make sure that we all understand that for me, my route to getting to where I am today was very circuitous, right? There's a lot of different ways that I got here. And it wasn't something that I thought about originally. And it wasn't something that I reflected upon until the last couple of years. But I want to let all of you know that excellence doesn't have to be a continuous path. It could be something that is trial and error, something that you are committed to and you work through in terms of your sense of passion. And then ultimately, if you're doing that at whatever value you put out for yourself, you're going to demonstrate that passion, that excellence, and people are going to pick up on it, and it's going to be meaningful to them. So that is what I wanted to talk a little bit about today. I know that as we move through our conversation, Ryan will have some questions for us, and I might be able to talk to you a little bit more about my experience. But me being committed to something, and I love this. I have two quotes here. Thanks, Sonia. I forgot about those. It's a beautiful thing when a career and a passion come together, and that's me. That is my life. I am so blessed to be able to get up every morning and come to campus and teach my students and work with the people that I work with. And Sonia, next slide, please. I have this quote in my office. I have it on my phone, something that means a lot to me. If you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I am one of those people that is blessed to be able to show up and be excellent every day and really put a lot of value in the people that I work with and the journey that I have taken, and to share that with everyone and sort of sprinkle dawn down on top of things whenever I possibly can. So thank you for sharing that. And I look forward to hearing any questions that you might have. And Marietta, I think you're up. And you're muted, Marietta, if you want to unmute yourself too.
Okay, thank you. You'd think I'd get the hang of this by now. You can see my slides, okay? All right, so I'm Marietta Scanlon. I guess I'm representing the George W. Atherton Award for Excellence in Teaching. I am an associate teaching professor of engineering here at Penn State Berks. And of course, I want to thank you for having me here, and thanks to my wonderful colleagues who gave such great views on excellence and truly demonstrate excellence in everything they do. So it's an honor to be here speaking with you. There are definitely common themes that both Don and Sonia have covered that I'm going to cover, but I thought as an engineer, maybe I'd approach it from an engineering standpoint and put my spin on it. And one thing that's important to remember is excellence is a moving target and is very subjective. And in engineering, we don't do subjective very well. We like specific goals and criteria, and we like to meet those goals and criteria. So a funny story I like to share is I was teaching a section of engineering design, which is our freshman cornerstone engineering class. And the project the students were doing was to design 3D printed kinetic art for the art gallery that's on campus. And so I had the gallery director come in and speak to the class, and she was talking about designing art and different possibilities. And I could see the students getting more and more uncomfortable. And boy, did I know why. There was not a criteria in sight. And I asked her when she was finished presenting, how do you know when you're done? How do you know when your art is done? And she said, you're done when you're happy. And that does not work for engineers. We like to measure our excellence against fulfilling a set of design requirements, not just when we're happy. So I thought, let me talk about what that might look like in terms of engineering and excellence. So I want to give an example. Let's say as an engineer, you have a client and they want you to design a doghouse for them. And there might be a lot of requirements, but let's focus on they want it to be red, right? So I know that as an engineer, the requirement is that I create and design a red doghouse. So I design this doghouse and it's red and I've done my job successfully. But have I done an excellent job? And we always need to ask, is that an excellent job? So let's say I design this red doghouse, but I also come in under budget and maybe I finish early. So that to me goes a step beyond. So I've taken a good design and I've maybe made a great design, right? But then I'm going to ask myself what more can be done to take this great job and make it excellent. So now let's say I talk to my client and I learn a little bit about them. What are their likes and dislikes? What does the dog like? What's the dog's name? And I modify my design a little bit more, right? All three of them have fulfilled the requirement. So as an engineer, I have been successful. But what makes the excellent one truly excellent? It's the extra effort that goes in. You go above and beyond, learn about the person, translate that into actions, and that takes what might be good or great and maybe makes it excellent. So then the next question I ask myself is, how does that as an engineer transfer into my teaching and into teaching? So of course I want to start with a design requirement, but in education, we'll call that an objective, right? So to simplify everything we do into a single objective, I want to successfully guide my students through the curriculum, through the EMET curriculum in my case, to an engineering degree, right? And there are a lot of ways to do that, but I'm going to sort of model just as I showed. So I can cover the required curriculum, right? If I cover the curriculum and the student passes the course and eventually they pass all of their courses, then I have met the objective and we've done a good job, right? But how can I do a better job? Well, for me, I might distill the curriculum in a way that the students truly understand it versus just passing the course. So what that means is I need to understand my audience. Who am I talking to? What motivates them? And another story, I'm sure you're familiar with Bitcoins and NFT and all those buzzwords. Well, this summer, I was having trouble understanding the concept. So I did some Googling and I found this video on NFTs. And in one video, they explained it as if they were talking to a 5-year-old, a teenager, an adult, and an expert, all in one video. And I was captivated through the whole thing and thought, wow, that is great. Knowing your audience, being able to use words that they understand is so important. And to me, that makes for a great experience. But I want to take it one step further, right? So if I can do the previous two, but I can also put myself in my students' shoes, then that's truly excellent. So just like the doghouse example, if you put in the extra effort, find out what the students really like, what they need, how do they learn best, what environment is best for them, that's the difference between great and getting them out of here with a degree and excellent, right, in academia. So after running through all of that, I thought I would like to come up with a couple of words, 3 words that capture the examples I gave. So these are my 3 personal keys to excellence. So the first, my colleagues already captured and nailed, and I think it's probably a running theme. The first is passion, right? If you love what you do, it allows you to put in that extra effort to make the better doghouse or to really connect with the students without it feeling like effort, right? And as a professional, that's important. But speaking to the students, as a student who's just starting out, that is so important. A lot of times students will choose a major or a career because of outside expectations, whether it's your parents, your teachers say, hey, you'd make a great engineer. Maybe your friends chose it and you've chosen it as well. And then as a student, once you commit to it, you feel like there's no going back. But I want to tell you that if you're not passionate, it's never too late to find out what drives you and what you're passionate about. And right now, you might not know what you're passionate about. It takes a long time. So pay attention in your life, in your classes, in your day-to-day, what brings you joy. And what brings you joy is what you're passionate about, and try to follow that. So that's my first key. My second key is humility. I think a lot of people think that if you're confident, you are excellent. And I personally, I think it's the opposite. If you are humble, you can be excellent. It's not about proving how smart you are. It's about teaching, especially in academia, and fostering a group of students who are going to go out into the world and do amazing things. And I'm going to step in here and say that my two colleagues here, they do that. They know that if they can make their students great, then they are doing excellent work. And there's no fear that if I enable people to be great, then they might look better than I am. That's not how it works, right? So great leaders take pride in seeing others succeed, not fearing that others will do better than them. And for me, I know I've achieved excellence if my students surpass my achievements, right? So that's my second and my last, and probably the most important is empathy. You got to recognize everyone has a story, everyone has their own challenges, and to be truly excellent, you have to put yourself in your students' shoes. So I'm going to close with a personal story. Growing up, I had a mom who had very high expectations. I always had high expectations of myself and others with very little flexibility, right? It's my way. This is how it's going to be. And my students knew that. And then my sons grew up, and Sonia mentioned her kids. I think kids put a good perspective on things, right? So I have 4 sons, 2 of whom have already graduated from Penn State. 2 of them are twins who are juniors at University Park. And as I pack them up and drop them off for college, I find myself wishing a few things for them, that they'd find their passion, right? That they're given every opportunity to succeed. And most importantly, if they ever found themselves struggling, whether in a class with a decision, that there was a professor there to help them. And at some point, I realized that the way I was hoping a professor would treat my sons was exactly the way I should be treating my students. And so my sons unlocked to me the most important key to excellence, which is empathy. And it was only then that I think I went from hovering between good and great to be able to ease over towards excellent. And I still hesitate to claim excellence because it's a moving target, but I'm much more aware. So I think I want to close and say that nothing comes easily or quickly. We've all made this journey with passion, humility, and empathy. You have the tools to get there, to develop the skills over time, learn from your mistakes, be open to learning from others, and that will make you truly excellent in what you do. That's it. I will stop sharing.
Awesome. Thank you all for those words. There was definitely themes across all 3 of the sort of presentations there on excellence, but unique perspectives too, from a staff member, somebody in the humanities, somebody in engineering. And so I would ask that anybody in the audience, if you would like to ask any questions, I have a few already generated here for our panelists, but please feel free to use the Q&A feature here in the chat if you would like to ask a question. So my first question is, how do you attempt to bring excellence to your team or colleagues? So, Sonia, I know you run a team of staff members. Don, you have vast different environments of teams. And I know, Dr. Scanlon, you have teams of students when you're doing research, right? So, so maybe Sonia, can you tackle the staff? Don, maybe the colleagues, and then Dr. Scanlon, Marietta, maybe the students. So, Sonia?
Sure. Thanks. Great question. I think I always treat others right as I'd like to be treated. So I've had some really good mentors and former supervisors. So while I don't exactly replicate their approach, I've pulled pieces from everybody, and then I try to incorporate that into what I do. And I think one of the things that I value as somebody who's being supervised is transparency, to the extent that that can be afforded. And I think that's what I like to bring to my team, and I hope that they pass on to other people, because I think having honest, open communication can help generate, that space where we can have mutual respect and understanding, but also do it in a professional and collegial way. I know personally, I hate surprises. I mean, surprise parties are cool, right? But I don't like surprises, and I want to have that shared mutual understanding that my staff probably don't like surprises either. So I think if we can have those pathways, for appropriate and timely, respectful communication, I think those are the things that I'd like to think that I bring to my staff, but they'll let me know if I'm wrong.
So I agree with everything that Sonia says, and I wanted to add something of the way that I like to look at this. In everything that I do, I try to model the way. I try to live my life, whether it's at home or in my office or in my classroom or working on committees with folks, the way I think that offers the best attempt at being excellent. And I don't necessarily think that I'm thinking about that all the time, but I'm living it in the way that I would love to be reciprocated to, right? So I remember when I was a little kid, there was this quote my parents would tell me, do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. And that's essentially what I try to do. So I try to model the way by living life in the best possible capacity so I can inspire others to success through the way that I am demonstrating it. Marietta?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to repeat what you said. I think modeling success and modeling excellence is so important. So speaking from the student perspective, I try to model excellence, but I also have very high expectations and make it clear that I have high expectations, but then also give them the tools to meet those expectations, because there's nothing worse than, setting a student up for failure. So giving the tools to succeed and never asking them to do something that you wouldn't yourself do, I think is really important. I think the other thing is that you have to learn something for the first time once in your life, right? And certainly at a university, students have never experienced that before, right? They are coming in having no experience or no knowledge. In engineering, there are a lot of things that they have never seen before. So recognizing that this is the first time that maybe they've used a piece of equipment, or, from the empathy standpoint, everyone's story is different. The way I grew up is not the way maybe my students have grown up. So to have my experience drive expectations of the students isn't fair, right? So learning what motivates, where they come from, what drives them, and then framing expectations with respect to that, I think really sets them up for success, and letting them know that you think they can do it, I think is absolutely a key.
Awesome. So that pretty much, I believe, answers a question that came in from one of our audience members. But maybe if you have anything else to mention about that, Marietta, you can, or Don or Sonia. The question is, how do we build excellence in our students? So I know Marietta just kind of talked about the students. Do you have anything else to add to that, Marietta, or should we pitch it over to one of the other ladies?
Yeah, I'll pitch it.
So, I mean, she pretty much talked about the students there, but Don, how do you build excellence in your students?
And again, I think we're probably all going to be broken records here, because I think that all three of us come, from the same perspectives, and the things that we do in our own spaces are probably similar. For me, I work really hard to provide what my expectations are, provide the tools to meet those expectations, and I love Marietta's use of the word empathy earlier, and to provide empathy. I want you to be successful in my classroom, and I want you to grow, and I want you to become better at what it is that you're doing. And I think by just letting my students know that from the beginning is one of the ways that I try to build excellence in them. And some of them are going to get it, and some of them aren't. And I have worked in higher ed and with students long enough to know that that's the case. And I also need to feel comfortable with that and not feel guilty if somebody is not picking that up, because they may not be in the place in their life where it's going to resonate for them. And I don't look at that as my fault if I'm doing everything that I need to do. It's just that they're not quite ready. And sometimes they'll come back to me and say, I wasn't ready, but I did it, and I heard you. And 10 years later, I get it, and thank you. So.
I have 2 cents. I think I kept thinking about vulnerability, right? And I think it's important to maintain professionalism. But I've noticed, as somebody who goes off into classes and presents to students, they will look up, or they'll make eye contact with you if you say something like, I know when I was in college or as a student, I experienced XYZ. and making those kind of connections and being like, I wasn't always perfect. I didn't have every semester wasn't a knockout semester for me as a student either. And I think if you can like just show them like, that's okay. Okay. Like we're not on a pedestal here. Like we're all I'm riddled with imperfections. So, and I will be the first one to admit it, but I think that's something also that I get the sense definitely from Dawn and Marietta, like we're lifelong learners. Like this is not like just, oh, we got this word. Okay. Like we're done. Like that's like, I think there's something that is in each of us. That's just like, yeah, we're going to have a bad day every once in a while, or things aren't going to turn out the way that we thought, but we're going to keep going because we can't really help ourselves. That's what I think. And I think that's okay to share that too with students, to say like, you keep going, but we're going because we're passionate about what we do.
So you walk kind of right into my next question. We won't talk about your imperfections, trust me. That's okay. We can have that as a side conversation. But the question,
that'll be its own chat.
Okay. The question is excellence necessarily perfection? How much are mistakes, failures a part of achieving excellence, and where you've come from to get to where you are now? You mentioned a little bit about that, but what's your take on if excellence is perfection?
I mean, if we're talking about how many failures I already had today, it's like 1 o'clock. Well, I got plenty. So no, I think again, like that's part of growth. And I love solving puzzles. I love looking at things from a different perspective. And I think there's value in that and modeling that, because I think so often it's like, oh, there's a roadblock. We can't do that. And I find myself not just doing this in my professional life, but in my life with my kids, like, oh, geez, that didn't turn out. What are other options? And I think I've been very intentional about doing that with them so that they don't just shut down, because I was at a part in my life where I did that too, like, especially as a young professional and as a student, like, like that's hard. That hurts, especially if you're doing what you're passionate about and then things don't always go as planned, and that's okay too. But I think that's what keeps me going. That's what improves me. And I think without those experiences, I can guarantee I would not be the same person that I am today.
And I wanted to add that I think that it's important that we should make mistakes, because that's the only way we grow. But if we're making a mistake and we don't review that mistake, analyze that mistake, take a look at it, take a deeper dive, see how we could have done it differently, that is where the problem lies. So what I would like to do is talk to my students about, how did you create this outline for this speech, and this is the reason why it didn't go as well, or what was your practice like in preparing it to deliver it. So I'd like to guide them in that sort of deeper dive of what can you learn from that.
And I'll jump in here. Sometimes I think perfection maybe inhibits excellence. If you're always worried about being perfect, you're not going to stick it out. You're not going to have the commitment, as Dawn said, to reach excellence. So, and I think it's important that we let our students know it's okay to not be perfect. And you're going to make mistakes and you're going to fail, and that's okay. And, I always think you want to make your environment, whether it's your classroom, your office, whatever, a safe space for students where they don't feel like they have to have this, oh, I can only ask a question if I already know the answer, because otherwise she'll know I'm not perfect or I don't know the answer. I think we want to be aware of that and encourage our students to show that they don't know and show that they're not perfect.
Great. Yeah. I mean, I often mention to my students, it's not a matter of when you're going to make mistakes. It's really what happens is, what do you do when you make those mistakes, right? How are you reacting? How are you, working to, fix that, to change that, to learn from that? So I think from, what all three of you just mentioned, I'll keep asking my students, what's going to happen next? What are you going to do after you made that mistake, and how are you going to grow from that? So great points. I think we'll just end with maybe one last question here, if that's all right. The question is, what's the best advice you can give a student coming in as an incoming student, or even a returning student? We have several, sophomores who maybe will step foot on campus for the first time this fall. What is your best advice for students seeking excellence, and maybe at the end of their first semester, the end of their first year? How do they measure excellence? What's some things that they can do to ask themselves if they have had an excellent experience here at Penn State Berks?
The first thing I recommend is get connected with like individuals or students that you want to be. When you get onto campus, we have so many phenomenal student leaders. If you can't find one, you come to me. We'll get you connected between our Lion ambassadors and our orientation leaders and our first year mentor. I mean, the list goes on. So there are a plethora of resources as far as people that you can connect with, because your behaviors are going to be mirroring their behaviors instead of sitting in your dorm room playing video games. You know, you're in the library, you're doing work, you're part of study groups. You know, you're performing those student success behaviors. So I think it's really important for students to keep the focus on that. And as you're entering your next semester or your first semester, you know, take some time now, you know, in the next coming weeks to really have some self-reflection and think about the student who you've been and realistically the student that you want to become. Oftentimes our academic advisors who are instructed to help you graduate in 4 years will give you, say, you need 18, 19, 21 credits, you know. My philosophy is to say, like, I want you to come back in spring semester. So let's take 12, 15, 16 credits, make it a little more manageable. So that way you're giving a true actual reflection of your ability and not like, oh, this is what happened when I got overwhelmed. But let's say that overwhelming part does happen or you drop a class. Guess what? Next semester, take one less. You know, make some changes, build in breaks between classes. Like, I think when you think about your academic record and your transcript, every transcript tells a story. Like, so what do you want your story to be? You know, so that first semester is going to establish a baseline, but that doesn't mean that that's the end of the story. It's just the beginning.
I think for me too, I think it's really important to build purposeful, intentional reflection into your life. I think that should be something that you should do every day, every week, every month, every year, every semester, and just take a look back at how you spent your time, what your habits were, what was the commitments that you made, and did you work in passion and humility and empathy, right? And I think by taking all of those things and taking stock of that regularly, when you're doing that, you're going to add up to excellence eventually. So by making that commitment and scheduling that intentionally, I think that's the best way to monitor it for yourself. I took all your words, ladies.
I was going to say, I have nothing left to say. Now, I'm never left without anything to say. So I agree with all of that, and that's great. The other thing I will say, and maybe it's not a popular academic opinion, but getting an A does not define excellence. And I always tell my students, make a decision first day of class. What grade do you want in this class? Because you might not want an A, you might not have the time in your life to put in all the effort to get an A. So make a decision on what grade you want and then do what you need to do to get there. And that for you will define your excellence. So using this grading scale and saying, okay, if you get 100, you're excellent and everyone else is not, is I think misleading and maybe damaging to students. So that's one key. And the other one I will say for any students who might watch this is don't wait until you're behind to get help. I think one of the biggest keys to success and excellence is recognizing when you need help and being okay with asking for it. Don't be the student who fails the first test and then comes in, sees me and says, I knew I was going to fail. Here it is. Do that as soon as you know, come and get help. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I just wanted to thank you once again to Dawn, Sonia, and Marietta for joining us today for the 5th part of our 6-part series on the Penn State values. Today, of course, we were talking about excellence, and just as a review, the Penn State value of excellence states we strive for excellence in all our endeavors as individuals, an institution, and a leader in higher education. And I think that anyone who will watch this webinar will agree and will experience how excellent of a place Penn State Berks is for both teaching and learning and for growing in all aspects of your life. So, so we look forward to helping you, with the different values and experiencing this value of excellence. A special thank you to everybody who joined us today for our LionSide Chat. As you click out of the webinar, you'll receive access to a survey. Please take the few minutes to complete that survey to let us know what your thoughts are about today's chat. You are encouraged to reach out to us via email, and we remind you to keep checking our website as we're always adding new chats. The last part of the values series for the summer will actually take place on the first day of classes here in the fall. It is our first year convocation that will be talking about the last value of community, and that is on August 23rd at 12:15. We also will shortly be uploading all of our chats for the fall semester, so do take a look at those on our website. Be sure to come back soon, meet with other faculty, staff, or students to learn about our exciting majors and experiences that you can be part of here at Penn State Berks. Stay safe, Berks and beyond, and we're signing off until next time. This has been the Penn State Berks LionSide Chats. Thank you, and congratulations again on your awards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.